Well, joining me now is the editor-in-chief at the Jerusalem Post, Zvika Klein. Very good morning to you. I suppose my first question is, what do you make of these protests that have broken out today?
So good afternoon from Jerusalem. I think these protests are unfortunately something that maybe Hamas would have liked, in general, causing a rift between many people within Israel. You have, those, obviously everyone wants the hostages to return safely and for the war to be over. There are those that are against the tactic of these demonstrations, as your correspondent mentioned them as disturbances. And it's really causing a lot of emotions because everybody really wants this to happen, but you have people on the extreme right saying, criticizing them, boycotting companies that are calling for their employees to go out and demonstrate. On the other end, you have those boycotting those companies that are not allowing people to take off and go to demonstrate. So it's very emotional and a lot of tensions.
A lot of tensions and maybe a reflection too of the divisions. Let's be frank, inside Jerusalem. As we're talking to you, we're seeing some pictures from Tel Aviv, a rather colourful protest, it must be said. But we should reflect the fact that there are quite stark differing views on there inside Israel.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I mean, many people who are leading these protests are those that also led previous protests before October 7th, even against a judicial reform. And therefore, the government sees them as a negative force and not someone, trying to actually help bring out the hostages. And there are those that say, pretty much more on the right or center right, saying the only way to get our hostages back is for military pressure. But also, I mean, the government has changed its view and has now been, giving a bottom line offer to Hamas, saying, let's end the war, bring back all the hostages, not in chunks of a dozen each time. That's something that the government was not saying in the past and now is saying out loud. But as we see, the talks are stalled.
The talks are stalled, and many have suggested, and have done for quite a long time now, that actually in many ways, politically, Benjamin Netanyahu wants this war to continue, that it's expedient for him to remain in power. And that's certainly what his political opponents would accuse him of.
Right. So, I mean, first of all, he's a lot stronger in the polls than he was after October 7th. He was at an all-time low. Ever since, as you really said, his strength became more significant. I think that at this point, Prime Minister Netanyahu actually wants this war to end, and he has succeeded in the Iranian attack, succeeded in Hezbollah attack in Lebanon. So he has those things he could say, he succeeded and he created, historic victory for Israel. But at the same time, I understand the critics of those saying he's just stalling. I will add, though, that Israel is really the only democracy within the negotiations here, other than the United States, obviously. And therefore, as we see in the streets, people demonstrating against the government, even though the government is not the only force that actually needs to be, pressured. It really is Hamas. It is the negotiators, being Egypt and Qatar, who are also in this game.
Yeah, just very finally on this, though, what about Israel's reputation internationally, which is, frankly, taking a real hammer?
Terrible. We're in a very difficult situation diplomatically. We don't have to be diplomatic. It's an all-time low.
An all-time low. What needs to change on that front? I mean, particularly given some of the suggestions about what may happen in Gaza in the weeks and months to come.
So I think in general, a war which is so long will always be bad for a public image. Many Israelis are torn because They don't want to return to their homes if Hamas will still be in power just a few kilometers away from where they live. At the same time, as you said, diplomatically, we're in a very difficult situation. Let's put it this way: if there was a different American administration, obviously, I think things would probably have to be different.
Okay.
So it's a very complex situation.
Zvika Klein, live there from Jerusalem, editor-in-chief at the Jerusalem Post. Thank you very much as those protests continue, as we can see in Tel Aviv this afternoon. We were just going to return back to our other main story today. That is, of course, Ukraine.